Okay, so today we're going to talk about the side spin and we're going to talk about patterns. So following on from what we did yesterday with the natural angles, with the side spin, we don't just use side spin for no reason. We use the side spin because sometimes we need to change the angle of the cue ball. So yesterday when we were doing the natural angles, as we said, you don't always leave yourself the natural angle. So that's why you have to use the side spin sometimes to manipulate the cue ball, to change the direction. So it's not only used to just manipulate the cue ball and to change the direction, but sometimes when you land out of position or you leave yourself the wrong angle, that's why using the side spin is so important. Because a lot of the time you leave yourself straight, and if you leave yourself straight on the ball and you have to get the cue ball in the opposite end of the table, the only way to get there is with side spin. But it's also important to use as little amount of side spin as possible. The harder it is to pot the ball and the harder it is to control the cue ball. So on the cue ball, yes, sometimes you have to play with extreme side, but most of the time you just need to try and keep it to within an inner circle on the cue ball. Sometimes you only need a little trace of side. So when I mean what we call a trace is just sometimes the center of the cue ball, it's just what, so if we put the dot in the middle of the cue ball, sometimes you only need to play with one dot width either side. So if I've got a ball on this side of on this rail, I would naturally play this with a little bit of left-hand side because it helps to just spin the ball in. If the ball was on this rail, I would play with a little bit of right-hand side. And most players do this because it helps to kick the ball down the cushion. For example, Mark Selby and Ronnie O'Sullivan, they would play this with a little bit of side spin. But for example, Ding Junhui, he plays it plain ball, straight in the middle. So each player is different, but I've had the conversation with Selby about this shot a lot. Even like this, so this side here, I would play with just a little bit of left-hand side. It just somehow makes the pot a little bit easier and also makes the pocket take the ball a little bit easier. And the thing to remember in this instance is, especially up the rails, especially on the Chinese 8-ball tables, the aim point into the pocket is slightly different. So what I mean is, the last place that you want it, I know you don't want to miss, but if you're going to miss, as in slightly miss, you're better off slightly missing to the far knuckle instead of the near one. And when you play with a little bit of side spin on the balls up the rail like this, it transfers a little bit of spin onto the object ball, which then makes the pocket play a little bit bigger. And even if it's only like, I don't know, maybe not even 1% bigger, it still gives you a bigger chance of potting the ball. Because especially when you're playing it slow, if there's a bit of spin that transfers onto the ball and it's spinning, if it does catch this knuckle or this knuckle, it's spinning in the right way to go in the pocket. So before we spoke about running side and check side. So this time, it works the opposite way. So when we play, I'm going to play the screw shot to here and get the cue ball to spin down this way. And a lot of amateur players think that they have to strike the cue ball with bottom left-hand side, but actually it's the opposite. It's bottom right to make it spin this way. And then sometimes there's the opposite, right? So, okay, you land this side. So now I've got to play with topspin. But it's the same with topspin. You either play with running side or check side. And playing with running side, which is left-hand side, all it does is means when the cue ball hits this cushion, it just widens the angle. So the natural angle that the cue ball will come off is this. There and there. When we play with side spin, we're just changing the angle. So all it's doing is it's making the spin from the cue ball do the work, which means you don't have to hit the cue ball so hard. So it means that if you can hit the ball softer, you have more chance of potting it. Yeah, I know this shot is quite easy, but if it's close to the rail, then you can just make the cue ball work just with the side spin. So here, to land on the 8-ball, it's it's not really a big shot. It's not really a powerful shot when you're playing this with running side. Especially on these tables, you just let the cue ball do the work with the spin. So in this shot here, I don't even have to hit it too hard, right? And also, I'm not putting too much side. I'm only aiming like, I'm not aiming on the extreme part of the cue ball. I'm only aiming sort of in between the middle and the extreme edge. I don't need too much. See, there was only a tiny little bit. Only this much. Yeah, and there I topped the cue ball, four cushions. 4 cushions, and I didn't really hit it hard. I let the side spin do the work. And this is the thing with side spin, because in most shots you need to use some sort of side spin, some sort of stun, some sort of screw, some sort of top spin. You have to use something sometimes. The important thing there was just making sure, as we did yesterday, that you strike the cue ball in exactly the place that you aim. Because I struck the cue ball there, right, in the place that I aimed. But if I catch the cue ball just a little bit, literally this much too low, then the cue ball hits, instead of hitting here on the cushion, the cue ball will hit there. So that's why it's just so important to always, you know, like here, if I was going to play the screw shot, so, you know, you see some of the players, they look at playing the screw shot around to get on the 8 ball, and they aim in a different place. So if I was playing the screw shot, I have to aim at the bottom. If I'm playing a screw shot, I aim here. I wouldn't aim here, and then some players, they come to the middle of the cue ball and then dip down or dip up. I have to always hit exactly the place. Because if I always aim right, I know that that's exactly where I want to hit it. And that's where I strike. And then all it is it's about the pace control. It's just about how hard I hit it. This one, that one I hit was too hard. This one, too soft. But the cue ball hit the same place. That's the most important thing, to make sure that you get the line that you're trying to get all the time. Then it's just about the pace control with your cue action. Yeah? But all 3 shots, the first one I hit too hard, the second one I hit too soft, this one was perfect, but the line was always the same. And that's the most important thing with the side spin. And there, what I did with this shot, for example, I just played with a little bit of with right hand side. So when the cue ball hits here, the cue ball does the work with the spin.